We got built a company that was valued around 600 million, but you kind of stepped off. Can you kind of take us through that initial structure of building this company and then feeling like, what, it's no longer working for me and I need to step off?
Yeah, I mean, building it was great. I think that like we hit the market at the right time. I think you ask most founders that are always like it was all based on hard work. I think they're lying. I think a lot of it is I think hard work is definitely a part of it, but also it's timing. We hit the market at the right time. And so we went from, let's say like 100 employees to like 600 over a period of a year, just because everyone was like, I need to send things at people's homes. I need to send things to my employees. And so it was crazy. It was great. It was fun to scale, fun to build. When I knew it was time to step away is when I would go into meetings. And in those meetings, people who were new would bring up ideas. They'd be like, oh, we should try this. And I'd be like, oh, we tried that 8 years ago. It didn't work. And I was like, oh, I'm becoming the guy that's negative in the meetings and like not innovating, but I'm talking about past times. And like at that point, I was like, I need to go build something new because the 0 through 10 million is my sweet spot.
Welcome to another episode of From a Garage to Growth. And today I'm welcomed by Braydan Young. And before we kickstart things on, Braydan, I just want to give you the floor, introduce yourself, and let the audience know you're on.
Good to meet everybody. I'm Braydan. I'm based out of San Francisco. I've been in tech for a very long time. Like worked like old institutional insurance first coming out of college, and then I was like, I should go into tech. So jumped into tech, jumped around a bunch of startups. Started my own company, 12 years ago now. First one was called Sendoso, which was a gifting platform. Send gifts around the world. We have warehouses everywhere, send gifts for most corporations. It was fun. Did that for about 10 years. Raised a lot of money. I got pretty good at fundraising. And then jumped to a new company about 5 months ago now called SlashExperts. It's a cool way to connect. Like rather than talk to sales, you can talk to a current customer of a product as your first step in the sales cycle. Or after you take a demo, you can talk to a customer. You're kind of taking the reference and putting it anywhere throughout the buying journey, which has been kind of fun. That's work-wise. Personally, I live out in, as I said, San Francisco, Marin. Listeners know it's like 30 minutes north. I have a 4-year-old daughter who is like another startup. She's fun and exciting and exhausting, but it's cool. She's at camp this week, so it's kind of nice. So I'm like, get to like
Some free time.
Yeah, hiking hills. I imagine. Like this morning, she was like, "I don't want to go to camp." I'm like, "I want to go to camp." Like you hang out and work. I'm gonna go to camp.
Let's swap places.
Yeah, right.
If only.
If only. But like hobby wise, like I love to. I mean, 4-year-old, your hobbies change, right? So we go on lots of bike rides. They have these things called rad bikes that are basically like these like cargo bikes with your kid on the back. So we blast music and ride that around, and it's just fun. And then where I am, it's a lot of running, mountain bike riding, etc.
I think that's somewhat similar to Cape Town, where we have a lot of hiking, mountain biking, running. So yeah, that's very similar because we have Table Mountain right here. And on a sunny day, people will probably be on the mountain.
Surfing a little bit. I'm not very good at it. I go out and roll around on the waves. I wouldn't surf in Cape Town though. That's like the shark capital of the world.
No, it's not really. I wouldn't even classify it as the shark capital. Not more than Australia. No, I think Australia is way more than us.
just swim faster than the other guy, and you're fine.
And you're good, yeah. I want to get into the nitty and gritty of our conversation. As you mentioned already, you founded Sendoso and you have built that company to a company valued around 600 million, which is like the holy grail. Like that's the goal for most founders that start companies. But you kind of stepped off. Can you kind of take us through that initial structure of building this company and then feeling like, what, it's no longer working for me and I need to step off? What was that internal dialogue like?
Yeah, I mean, building it was great. I think that like we hit the market at the right time. I think you ask most founders that are always like it was all based on hard work. I think they're lying. I think a lot of it is, I think hard work is definitely a part of it, but also it's timing. We hit the market at the right time. But timing, people were looking for different ways to connect with their customers and their employees and their prospects. They wanted to not just send an email or do a phone call, but send some sort of gift to say thank you or hey, let's connect, and making sending more or making connecting more personal. Then COVID happened, and COVID helped us explode. Like when everyone was stuck at home and they couldn't go anywhere, the mail was massive, and so we went from let's say like 100 employees to like 600 over a period of a year, just because everyone was like, I need to send things to people's homes. I need to send things to my employees. And so it was crazy. It was great. It was fun to scale, fun to build. When I knew it was time to step away is when I would go into meetings. And in those meetings, people who were new would bring up ideas. They'd be like, oh, we should try this. And I'd be like, oh, we tried that 8 years ago. It didn't work. And I was like, oh, I'm becoming the guy that's negative in the meetings and like not innovating, but I'm talking about past times. And like at that
Yeah.
point, I was like, I need to go build something new because the 0 through 10 million is my sweet spot. I loved that at Sendoso. I loved the chaos of building early companies, the chaos of like not spending time on strategy, but more of like, hey, how can I just put the grit and the work in to get to that number was where I have the most fun. Strategy and stuff is cool. I think it's cool to learn how to do that, but that wasn't where I was as good as I am from the 0 to 10. So I knew I had to leave. I knew I needed to find a new idea to go build.
And how do you find that new idea to build?
Yeah. So I started by looking at issues internally at Sendoso. And it was like, what problems are we having that I wish there was a solution or a tool that could help me figure this out? And like one of the first ones we found was like pipeline. Like the only way you get pipeline is people take demos. And that was diminishing. People weren't taking as many demos. We're like, I don't want to talk to sales. Like I'm looking for a different way to engage. And so you had these companies popping up, these PLG companies or 14-day free trials that people would add to their websites. It was cool, but I didn't think it was the solution. It was people wanted to talk to their peers. We saw there's a lot of back channeling happen, people asking questions about Sendoso to their peers. And we're like, how can we put that front and center on our site? So we started testing it. I think like I had the opportunity of being able to test it internally. I think that really helped figure out like, hey, this is my next idea to go and build. And then you start pitching it to your friends, family, anyone who will listen and be like, hey, if I had a tool like this, would you use it? And we got good feedback. So we're like, all right, let's see if we can make that happen. So I think that like just looking at your own day to day and finding issues, finding challenges, ways that things do it easier is typically how you find those ideas for sure.
And the other thing, as a founder, you're kind of tied to your company. I think with most founders I speak with, they refer to the company as a marriage, which kind of defines you. Now, when you are no longer Braydan from Sendoso, you're no longer this co-founder. Who are you? And what was that journey like, that process of untangling yourself from this identity that you had helped build?
It was like ending a long-term relationship. You're like, I think we're done. And you slowly have to unwind it. Yeah, I mean, it took months to like really unwind that. A good example was when I left the company and they shut my email down, Slack went down. Like internally, because like I was the one that set that up like 10 years ago. So it was one of those things where like, I mean, I'm still a large shareholder. So I still know and have and hired most people that are there. And so I think that like, even with unwinding that, you knew you put the right people in place. And you're like, okay, like I have a lot of stock in this company. I'm fully vested in that stock. I want to hope that everything goes well here. The company keeps growing. So I think if you feel comfortable with that, then I think, and you knew you needed to go build something, then I was like, all right, it's time to unwind this thing, which took months. And then from there, I took about a couple day break. Probably should have taken longer, but I like building things. So I announced a couple of days later, I was working on this new company called SlashExperts, where I was the CEO, not just the co-founder. And I spent a lot of time doing posts on LinkedIn about like why I made this jump, why this was important, why I believe in this company. So I think like all that helped. But I definitely still, even on demos of the new company, people ask about Sendoso if they're users. They're like, hey, like I have this problem. Like, okay. So I think that'll always be there. I don't think that goes anywhere. I just think it depends on like if you keep connections with your old company. I still talk to those guys a ton. My next door neighbor is my co-founder, who's CEO. So like so I'm very attached to it still. I did leave the board too. That was another big step. I left the board because I just couldn't be a good board member with building something new. So that was a big step too. Not just leaving the company, but also leaving like all the daily updates was a big step.
So the other thing you talk about a lot is B2B and how that kind of is broken currently right now.
Yeah.
For founders that are listening and fighting for every deal, fighting for funding, what do you think is the biggest lie that they've been told about how to grow a business in the last decade?
Yeah. It's changing so drastically these days too, because you have like AI just like dominating conversations. Like everything is AI. I think it's great. I think that in 5 years, a lot of the things that AI is touting it can do will be amazing and it can do it. I still think right now, though, if you're selling a B2B product that happens to be at a certain price point, we're seeing like, let's say 5,000 and above, there usually is a conversation taking place between a human. I don't think that ever, unless you happen to be like AWS or something like that. But if you're starting a company and you're a B2B product, you can find AI to help you with things, but you're still going to have to do some traditional sales and get on the phone with that prospect, with that customer to close that deal if your price point is larger than $5,000. So I don't think traditional human to human connection ever goes away. I think that that's here to stay for a long time. There's anomalies. There's ones that are making 100 million plus ARR that don't have that. But I don't think that's at all. I think that's the exception, not the rule. So I would say the lie is you need to still build some traditional sales in order to sell your product. Because if you build something cool, people can't find you. Like it's not like you're like the customers don't show up like, oh my, this is exactly what I wanted. I mean, I think you can point to like exceptions, like Cursor is probably an exception. Like those guys built something cool and like they've gone from 0 to 100 million in like 2 days. But I don't think most companies do that at all.
And you talked about AI and how that has kind of shifted the conversation a little bit. I feel like that's also kind of mirrored the conversation of how companies reach each other now as well, where with regards to cold calls and endless emails, that no longer is part of the conversation. What do you think has led to that shift of how companies connect with each other and how people network with each other as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a problem right now because I think you have people that are building incredible things. And how do you get that information out there? So cold calling, emailing is inundated. People are like, I don't want to respond to I get probably like 15 cold calls a day that I never answer. And like emails is the same thing. So I think both of those are just messy, like even more messy than they ever have been. And now those messiness, they're all personalized. It's like, hey, like I see you like Marin and like hiking. Like check out my product. And you're like, it's not like I think that like it doesn't work. So I think then you look at how are other ways to get your message out there. And I think events are huge. I think like going in person and having a booth, I think that's only going to be more and more compounded as people are just like, there's too many tools for everyone to know what works and what doesn't work. So I think conferences are going to be massive. I think what your peers are buying, being like, hey, like, have you found a solution for this problem? If they had, great. I think like that's kind of where we're living there. I think gifting using the mailbox is still a good one because people don't get a ton of handwritten notes. I get more than I used to, but like I don't get as many as I thought I would. And so I think like those old traditional channels, like the in-person face-to-face stuff starts to get more popular as people are just overwhelmed with the amount of data and sales and outreach that are out there. Because now like a team of like one can do the job of like 20 with AI tools. But I still don't think that helps. It's just more noise at the end of the day. So I think it's a huge issue for sure. I think it's very easy to build a company today where you don't have any sales because it's just hard to get in front of the prospects.
And the other thing you speak about a lot is finding a champion. Okay. What is a champion? Like,
yeah, I think the easiest way to describe what a champion is someone who believes in the tool that you're building. And they're like, yeah, hey, like I will help you navigate my company to help you sell us this tool. And you need a champion in a company. Like everyone thinks about, hey, I'm going to go sell the C-level executive on my tool, which is fine. But you need somebody who is just a IC, an individual contributor who truly believes in your product and your solution, who can help you navigate that company. It could be anybody. I think not just an IC. It could be a manager. It could be a director. I think it's important to have someone like that to help you know who to talk to, where to push, how to get a contract done, how to get through procurement. That champion helps. It's kind of like your guide internally at those companies. You're selling enterprise, your champions are even more important. You're selling SMB, they're still important. It's a little easier for a champion to get to a CEO, but bigger companies, your champion has to be very good at buying software and knowing how to do it.
All right. So now I'm a founder listening to this, and I'm completely bought in with this idea of a champion. But where do I start? How do I go about identifying my potential customers into being champions?
Yeah. So I think like if you have like, let's say you identify 20 ideal prospects or like who I want to sell to. And then you should know like who your ICP is, like who your most ideal customer profile is. Let's say you sell into marketing like we do. And so like, hey, like at this company who's one of my top 20, this is their CMO, like the person signing the contract. So you're like, great, I've identified that person as the person I want to get to. You can't typically just call a CMO unless you happen to be selling SMBs. So usually it's like, how do I get to that CMO? So you start outlining the team as a who's on this person's team. like who rolls up to them, who's the director level, who's the manager level, who's there's people that are the ICs doing the work. So you kind of map that out. And then I think you start trying to get a hold of them. It might be things like direct mail. I would also email and phone calls are not as effective, but you have to do it because I think you might get lucky. You try to figure out what conferences they go to and like maybe the CMO or director of marketing at those conferences. Great. And so then eventually, let's see, you find someone in that group who's willing to take a phone call or willing to engage with you on email. Awesome. Now you found somebody who might be your champion. So from there, you want to be like, hey, here's what we're doing. Explain your problem, explain what you're building. This takes time. This takes months to get to that person. And then eventually, the hope is a person's like, great, demo me. So you demo them, you make them a true believer, and then that person is your champion to help get through that org and to eventually get to that CMO to sign your contract. So deals these days, I think a deal cycle that used to take a month probably now takes 3. I also think you need to get really good at knowing like what issue is you're solving. Your first demos might be more informative, and then your second and third demo might be more like, hey, here's how we're going to help you directly. So there's tons of disco, getting tons of information about that company as to how you can help solve their challenge that you hope they have.
So now we've
a long process.
Yeah. So you mentioned one thing about demoing, and kind of this is when you sell that idea to this champion. How do you demo my idea to this champion so I sell them on my idea?
Yeah, I think that so there's a couple ways you can take a demo. There's demos that you take that are purely just like discovery phone calls, like just getting information about that company. I don't think those are as effective as they used to be because they're willing to give you some info, but they're also on the phone to see what you're doing. So I think a demo that also spends all the time in a deck talking about the problem they're solving and talking about stories, I think that's okay. I like demos where they show me the product right away. I get to see the tool and how it works and how it performs. And I think that you need different versions of your demo. There are different speeds. Like maybe one demo is 5 minutes, maybe another one is an hour. Maybe some things you go into deep integration conversations, maybe other things you say high level. So I think you need to be able to have multiple demo in your back pocket to be able to get that person excited. But the goal is if it's your first demo, it's all informative and all disco. If it's your 5th demo, it's very technical because I imagine by that point you've already identified they have a problem and how your tool can help solve it.
Mm-hmm. And now let's talk about how SlashExperts. Say I'm a sales rep and I'm stuck on a deal. How do I go about using your platform to kind of getting that prospect into a valued customer?
Yeah. So the biggest thing with SlashExperts is you might end up on a web page that you got an email from or direct mail from or an ad from. And so you click on their page and then you scroll down to their carousel of logos that you see and it's the social proof of oh, you work with all these great companies. That's amazing. And there'll be a button front and center that's like, hey, talk with the customer. Press that button. It pops up as a pop-up of a bunch of active customers on that tool that are willing to have a conversation with you as a prospect and explain to you why they bought this tool and how it helps solve a problem for them. So you can click on hey, I want to talk to this person today at 2:00. So now that call pops up on your calendar. You call in and that customer has they're being thanked, of course, by saying, hey, thanks for taking the time. But they're mostly just there to help you as a peer to say, hey, here's how we bought this tool. Here's what it does for us. Here's why it's great. It's a third party. They don't get paid if the deal closes. So the goal is to just help give information to you. And I'm sure we've all heard the phrase 80% of the deal is done before you ever actually talk to a sales rep because people are doing research. And typically that research has always been talking to peers and reading reviews. And we're let's just get this, let's give control to the company. And so as you're talking to that customer, you can ask all those questions as to how it helps solve the problem. Our tool will recommend who the right person is to talk to. If you're a CMO, it might be a CMO. Just to make it easier. So that becomes the first step in the sales cycle. That's that's our first solution. Our second solution is if you're a sales rep and you had a really good first conversation, but maybe that prospect has gone quiet. Maybe you're why is this person getting back to me? You could actually send your SlashExperts link over to them and be hey, haven't heard from you in a while. You should talk to John, who's a customer of ours who had a similar problem to you. And when he bought us, here's his success now. Book a time with them. So your follow-up becomes almost you're taking the reference from the end of a sales cycle to the beginning or the middle. And so that's how the two main ways folks are using us to use their customer base as like a really good reference selling source.
And how much is it a game changer with regards to having a ability to actually contact the customer rather than having that static, it was a great service that they offered that you get on a website? How different is those two things?
I mean, massively. I mean, like the biggest thing we saw is most of the time when you're trying to find information on a tool, if you should purchase or not, if you, let's say like you ask the company for a reference, so like, oh, like meet Brian, and you're like, and Brian's now you're in an email chain. You have to go figure out a time to connect with this people. So I'm like, ours is just like you click a link and you connect right away. It's really easy.
Yeah. So let's say now I've had a few wins. I've gotten like 2 people to be in my champions. How do I go about turning those 2 individuals into more champions?
Yeah, I mean, I think like if you have 2 champions and like one you've closed a deal with both of them, awesome. Now that's where, as a sales rep, I think it's not as good as a founder. You need to stay connected to them. So it's emails, conversations, saying, hey, like how are things going? The goal there is like once people are in the door, they purchase your tool. Like that's like the best advocate of all time. So getting them to connect to other customers, getting them to connect to prospects is huge. Getting them on webinars, doing kind of like becoming an advocate of yours is insanely important as a founder. There's the people that do this the best. So there's a big conference in San Francisco called Dreamforce. And it's Salesforce's big conference. And what they do is they take their customers and they put them on gigantic billboards, like Braydan Young, like head of sales at ABC company, and my picture's on there, and I'm basically like a rock star. And so like they're taking their customers and making them like immense advocates of theirs because they call them trailblazers. Like it's brilliant. Like building a community of people on your tool is such a good move because they'll never leave you because they think they have invested interest in you for sure.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And also, how do I now as a company, how do I use the feedback from my champions to kind of get reliable metrics of like, oh, this is what I need to improve on?
Well, that's the hard part. I think that like, cause you get a lot of feedback as a founder. So I think I think to take it and to digest it and figure out like when we've always done our building at Sendoso too, was we sold a lot of deals where we needed to have certain elements of our tool built in order to sell the deal. So we'd say, hey, like sign up for us and give us 2 months to build that feature. So we'd build the feature with them in order to close the deal, but we'd close the deal early and be like, hey, we'll build this if you sign a contract. Like that's important because you're able to get deals on and you're able to then build something they need. So I think feedback's always awesome. We do things like QBRs. I don't think is enough. I think you got to connect every month as an early company. You got to sending surveys is not great as a small company. I think have a conversation with them. Always thank them for their time. You can go even deeper. At Sendoso, our first 20 customers, we gave equity to the company in. So we said, hey, like because you're a champion and you're amazing, we'll give you a small amount of equity to have skin in the game.
Let's say now I'm using your tool and I'm trying to go to my board. Since your platform plugs into the CRM, what are the 1 or 2 metrics you tell leaders to kind of put on the dashboard to kind of convince their board to kind of our platform is actually driving your revenue?
Yeah, for SlashExperts, we concentrate on 2. It's one, speed of deal. So if a deal went in from an expert conversation, did the deal close faster? So we look at that a ton, and we're seeing that it closes 4 times faster with us. And the second one is size of deal. Just like, hey, was the deal larger than someone who just came in on their own and kind of went traditional sales? So we look at those 2 a ton, mostly. Like those would be the 2 that we focus on. It's like, hey, we know these deals are closing quicker, which is why we can sell via pilot. So it's like, hey, like try this for a month, and I guarantee you that it will be quicker than a traditional book a demo button.
And another thing I see when I zoom out and look at SlashExpert, it feels like it's part of a much bigger shift with regards to what's happening currently, where people are kind of using the expertise to kind of create their own markets. So do you feel like you're building an SS tool to kind of build that type of community? And are you getting in early on with regards to the kind of shift that's happening in the market?
So we're definitely early. It's a new way of doing sales, but like the true value of what we're building. And so like everything on the surface level is great, like connecting, helping close more deals. But the true value is that call that happens between a prospect and a customer is recorded, and we put that into an LLM, and all that data from that phone call is immensely valuable because like it might, like your customer might talk about your product completely different than you talk about it on your website or than your salesperson might talk about. So we give you all that data back to you, and you can help adapt and change what your site says, what your content says. So it's all first party data that you own. We're just collecting it for you, which is insanely valuable. And like that's the piece that we're most excited about is being able to be a fly on the wall in those conversations and give you that information back to you. It's going to change the way that you market. It's going to change the way you talk about your product.
When I was preparing for this interview, you've called the approach anti-AI, but yet you use AI in your platform,
we use
platform
AI.
as well. Do you feel like you're focusing on AI or you're using AI to kind of remove some of that lag with regards to m- giving the conversation to the humans where it's 100% more authentic, giving the groundwork to the AI? Is that the approach you're going
Yeah,
with?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that like the product on the surface is anti-AI because we're connecting like humans to humans to have conversations. But on the
Mhm.
back end, like we're still collecting that data to do cool AI LLM training on. So, but it's both for sure. I think it's impossible to build a company today that doesn't have AI intertwined. I mean, even with our hiring, like we'll look and see, do we need to hire somebody or can an AI solve this for us? And so I think that or an agent. So I mean, that's a big thing that all companies need to do today for sure.
And you mentioned that it's difficult to build companies nowadays without AI. How do you go about building your company with AI? Because I go to conferences and then I will see maybe two, three companies that are not AI centric and the rest will just be AI. Do you feel like there's such a saturation that's happening in the market now with everyone just diving into this AI
Yeah,
thing?
absolutely. And there's like 10 new companies every day. And like you go to LinkedIn and everyone's a billionaire. Everyone's like, oh, I built an AI company and I turned it on and I get to hang out at my beach house and it makes $1 million a day for me. Like there's so much BS that's out there with AI. It's inundated with how much is there. I think that so much of it is fake. So much doesn't work. So much is it's and like everyone's using the same like 4 or 5 LLMs, right? So it's one of those things where like,
Mhm.
is it really changing the world? As a lot of these AI companies approach like their very first renewal cycles, because none of them are more than a year old. I don't know what's
Yeah.
going to happen to a lot of them. I feel like a lot of them are raising a lot of money and they're sprinting towards a brick wall. And like it's going to be interesting to see who wins that race. I mean, there's crazy. I mean, like even like where I am, like Meta is like hiring. If you have like AI in your title, Meta will hire you. It's interesting
And
to
do you
see
feel
what happens.
like the .com bubble that was there and now it burst? Do you feel like AI is kind of
Yeah.
leading to that as
Yes.
well?
Absolutely. And like it's San Francisco's wild. Like it's like another gold rush, and there's people moving here all the time that are getting very high offers. OpenAI is raising. I mean, I think like every day I feel another. Like I feel like I see another headline that's like AI or OpenAI raises another 30 billion. So I feel like it's wild. I mean, like OpenAI is a private company valued at like I think $500 billion. That's nuts.
Yeah.
So I think it's for sure a gold rush. There's a lot of money involved. So I don't know
Hmm.
what's going to happen with all of it for sure.
And so the trick is how do you get into that gold mine early on?
Oh, yeah.
And what's your advice in terms of like building on AI?
I don't know if I knew the answer to that one. I think that like for me is like we're building a company that we know there's a problem to solve. Like even with these AI companies, at some
Hmm.
point they'll have to do traditional sales. So that's what we're
Yeah.
trying to build. When it comes to like trying to get in on the AI world, I think you got to find a problem that they're not solving. I like AI that solves like traditional problems. Like a good example and one that I think is valued at far too much money is Henry. Like Henry's out of the UK, and like I think they're at like $100 million ARR, is $1 billion valuation. And like they're solving doing red lines in contracts. I think that's brilliant. It's a
Hmm.
problem we've always had. That makes a lot of sense. So I think like if you're going to build an AI tool, like find a problem that is just so easy and AI can make it better. That would
Yeah,
be
yeah, yeah.
advice if you want to build a company in that space. There's a lot of money in that space right now. That's for sure.
Yeah. So for my final question for you, Brayden, you've had two different founder journeys. One kind of characterized by uh, going out, seeking funding and building a company that's worth around 600 million. And now your other journey now with SlashExperts, you kind of get into it with experience already. How have those two journeys been different for you?
Yeah, like the biggest difference is like the first one was with Sendoso. I didn't have a family. I wasn't married, didn't have a kid. And so it's amazing like how building that company, because I was obsessed with it. It was like, 12 plus hours, 18-hour days, and like it wasn't always working smart. But you just work to work. The second time
Yeah.
around, I think we're spending a lot of time where we know the right things to do, and we're not working 18-hour days because we're all older and have kids now that we want to hang out with. But we know the right things to do because we've gone through the errors of making those errors the first time around. Like I think that, knowing what to do with financial statements, like we know exactly who to hire to basically run that for us because we've trial and errored that at the previous company. We know when it comes to building that you need to buy tools like Jira and ClickUp that keep control of things so you know where their sprints are. So I think that what tools to put in place that just
Hmm.
you learn through trial and error at your previous company that you were at. So I think that's a massive one. So you're not spending as much time testing things that aren't working, and you're spending a lot of time being more organized. A great example is when we first started Sendoso, we had Salesforce, but we didn't use it properly and contracts were all over the place. Now we're in HubSpot, but it is immensely organized. I'm the only salesperson here. We're mostly engineers. I have all my deals in there, what my next steps are, and that's all for me. No one else is clicking on that, but it keeps me very organized, which helps. So I think you learn from the past experience of hey, things that you spent too much time on that were unnecessary. Now you can just skip that part because you know what to put in place. So I think that's probably one of the biggest ones. The second one is just knowing what your options are at any given time. So we know every time we bring a customer on, we just need to spend more time with our customers and talk to them, learn what they need. It's not all about just as fast as sales as possible, but you learn how to build a community around your first 20, 30 customers. I think we learned that most of too. So we're doing the same.
I'm interested about the aspect that you mentioned now, building a community around your first customers. How do you go about doing that?
I think I think equity is a big one. I think having conversations with them often as what things is the product missing. I think selling them a deal that their SaaS fee is way lower than your list price because they're going to pay you in feedback. Things like that are important in order to.
Ooh,
And then
okay.
and then I think it's things like just thanking them for being a believer at the beginning.
And so the last thing is, where do people go if they're looking for you?
Yeah, I'm the only Braydan Young on all of LinkedIn. The way my name is
Really?
spelled, Braydan. Yeah, the only one. So
Yeah, okay.
you type in Braydan Young on LinkedIn, that's me. So I'm the only one. So connect with me, please.
Okay, perfect. And that's all from us. And look forward to the next episode of From Garage to Growth.